Hi there! With Blade Titan having been the Gunsmoke boss for the past 3 seasons, I'm assuming we'll be switching to the next one, a frost variant of the Horn Beasteel. While I don't think Mika officially announced a new boss yet, it's probably best to be prepared either way. With that said, let's quickly go over its mechanics so that those of us willing to give it a try have a better chance of achieving a high score. Let's start with the good news. Like the Blade Titan, this boss has about 17 million HP, 5k defense and 175 stability, so we're getting a brief reprieve before the bullet sponge gets even spongier. Every round, the boss uses an attack against the nearest and farthest doll. Here, the first hit is directed at Fatusa in front of the boss. This deals freeze damage in a 3x3 tile AoE and applies 1 stack of deep freeze. The translations in the showcase are unofficial, but since everything revolves around this debuff, let's go with this naming. Each stack of deep freeze reduces a carrier's defense by 5% and lasts for 3 turns. The second hit targets the farthest doll, here Michdi, again dealing freeze damage and applying a stack of deep freeze in the AoE. Note that the goal is to gain as many stacks as possible on your 2 best DPS units, because deep freeze will get converted into a damage bonus. Ideally, you'd want to position your dolls close to each other so that the attacks hit everyone and no stacks are lost. Then, with its next skill, the boss applies Icicle to all dolls on the field, unless you break it too quickly, in which case only the 3 dolls with the highest attack are targeted. This debuff gets applied on turn 1 and 4 and takes effect at the end of your team's next round. To see what it does, let's jump ahead to the end of the team's second turn. Everyone is still affected by the debuff. After all dolls held their turn and we're about to transition to the boss's second round, Icicle activates, detonating on each of the targets, dealing freeze damage in a 5x5 tile AoE and applying 1 stack of deep freeze to everyone in range. After Icicle popped, everyone is afflicted with 5 stacks. More importantly, this includes the boss as well. By positioning the team within close range, it will also receive the damage and debuff stacks. Remember that each stack reduces a carrier's defense by 5%, so at most you can lower the boss's defense by 25% this way. The stacks are applied to the boss at the end of round 2 and 5 and will then essentially last for 2 of your team's rounds, meaning on turn 3, 4, 6 and 7. As noted, try to avoid breaking its stability on round 1 and 4 so that you obtain Icicle 5 and not just 3 times. Now let's go back to where we left off on the boss's first turn. The final skill of this round is again directed at the nearest target, dealing freeze damage to everyone in a 7 tile wide fan-shaped area. This ability is used often and with proper positioning allows you to more deliberately choose which dolls receive the most deep freeze stacks. One thing to note about deep freeze is that while it is not cleansable, 2 stacks are removed each time you receive healing. Here you see Fatusa with 2 stacks. With the attack and the healing due to Basti, the stacks are gone. Characters like Basti or Springfield who can't control their healing make it impossible to play around this mechanic. With someone like Yui, you can exert some influence by choosing her second rather than her first extra skill when necessary. It's still somewhat of a hassle because you want healing some of the time, just not always. Moving on to the Icicle detonation that you've seen before. Remember that this occurs right before the boss's second turn starts. Because this applies 5 fresh stacks of deep freeze to everyone, you do have at least some stacks at this point, unless you have Springfield on the lineup, who heals automatically when taking damage. As the boss's actual turn starts, it uses as always the ability that targets the nearest and farthest doll to apply deep freeze in a 3 tile AoE around the targets. Even if you had healing during your team's turn, you can regain up to 7 stacks of deep freeze this way. This matters because with his next ability, the boss chooses 2 dolls with the highest number of deep freeze stacks and converts them into an equal number of icy spike stacks. This increases the doll's damage by 5% per stack. Since everyone except Michdi had 7 stacks, the boss randomly chose Basti and Lind for the conversion. You can still see the debuff stacks on Lind right next to the newly gained buff stacks, but deep freeze is removed after the attack. Icy spikes last for 2 turns, so the damage buff is essentially active during the same time window as the defense shred against the boss, meaning on turn 3, 4, 6 and 7. If you have no healing on the lineup, you'd want to position your best damage dealers to always receive the most stacks. If you have single target healing, you can deliberately lower the stacks of your support characters. With the boss's third turn, its cycle concludes. 3 out of the 4 skills here are familiar and don't do much apart from reapplying new deep freeze stacks. So, there's only one more ability we need to go over. On round 3 and 6, the boss starts by using an attack that deals AoE freeze damage to everyone and applies Frozen for 2 turns. Then, as part of the same attack, the boss consumes all deep freeze stacks from your team and gains an equal number of icy spike stacks. Here, it gained 28 stacks for a total damage bonus of 140%. But more importantly, it also gains a damage reduction effect that scales with the number of icy spike stacks. If the number of stacks is below 10, it gains 10% damage reduction, 15% if between 11 and 20 stacks, or 20% if more than that. To prevent the boss from gaining too much damage and mitigation, it's best to minimize the number of remaining deep freeze stacks before you end your 3rd and 6th turn respectively. The easiest way to accomplish this is by spamming healing. Remember that the boss converted deep freeze to icy spikes for your dolls on the previous round, so at this point the stacks have no benefit. After plenty of healing from Yoi's first extra skill, the boss doesn't gain any icy spike stacks, resulting in a damage reduction of only 10% and no damage bonus. The damage reduction buff has no duration, but gets removed from the boss after receiving 5 instances of damage from the same ammo type. It's not always completely clear which attack has which ammo type, but having multiple users with the same weapon type or individual characters with multiple attacks is a good way to tackle this mechanic. Here, Alva uses an assault rifle and makes 2 interceptions. Then, the passive of Valmastina's S2 triggers. Next, Yoi launches her attack for the 4th assault rifle hit. And finally, Alva makes the 5th and final hit with her S1. As the attack goes through, the damage reduction buff disappears and gets replaced with the 10% vulnerability debuff, lasting for this turn. With that, you've seen all the mechanics of this fight. This is the rotation of the boss for the first 3 rounds, which then gets repeated. Its actions on round 7 don't matter, so we can safely ignore them here. Every round, the boss will attack the nearest and farthest doll with a 3-tile AoE and apply 1 stack of deep freeze in the area. On 4 out of the 6 rounds, it will also do its fan-shaped 7-tile AoE attack directly at the nearest doll, again for 1 stack of deep freeze. While you want to ensure that your 2 best damage dealers get the most deep freeze stacks, it's probably easiest to group up everyone in front of the boss for the fight, as constant repositioning will likely be the quickest way to uninstalling. With that out of the way, we can remove the fluff and focus on the key abilities. On round 1 and 4, the boss applies Icicle to all dolls, which detonates at the end of your team's turn. Avoid stability break on these rounds so that everyone receives a debuff. Ensure that you're close enough to the boss so that the Icicle explosion hits it as well for a total of 25% defense reduction. This is active starting from the end of round 2 and lasts until the end of round 4, and then gets reactivated at the end of round 5, lasting for the remainder of the match. On the boss's 2nd and 5th round, it will convert Deep Freeze into icy spikes for the 2 dolls with the highest stack count. This lasts for 2 turns and aligns with the 25% defense reduction. By the end of the 2nd round, you can have 10 stacks at most for a damage bonus of up to 50%. By the end of round 5, you can have up to 13 stacks for 65% bonus damage. If you can, try to have the most stacks on your 2 best damage dealers while keeping the stacks low on everyone else. Lastly, on round 3 and 6, the boss will consume all Deep Freeze stacks from your dolls and gain icy spikes plus a scaling damage reduction effect. Avoid having more than 10 stacks in total at this point via healing or repositioning. Removing the defense reduction buff via 5 same ammo type attacks applies 10% vulnerability to the boss. Since you don't want to break the boss on round 4, you're probably looking at your best damage opportunities on round 3, 6 and 7. That should do it for this quick guide. Hopefully, the mechanics of this fight became clear enough to feel reasonably well prepared. Don't feel too stressed about getting the number of Deep Freeze stacks right. Selective healing is quite uncommon nowadays, and popular characters like Springfield, Yoi or Basti are still integral to their team comps. I'd say you're gaining already something just from hugging the boss for the 25% defense penetration, and any additional damage bonus is simply a welcome extra. If you're using autoplay, set your doll's behavior to aggressive so that they don't run away from the boss. In any case, I wish everyone the best of luck in chasing their high scores. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.